Instead of a prayer, I have a poem that I would like to read as an opening.
Okay, beautiful.
I saw this and I really liked it, so I saved it. Someday we'll open up the window of the world and let the sun shine through to warm up the cold hearts and let the love flow through. One day we'll open up the window of the world and all wars will end and people everywhere will hug one another as friends. One day we will look out as the sunshine streaks through, spreading love and happiness all around this old world for everyone, including me and you. Some might call it just a dream, but I believe it to be true that one day we'll open up the window of the world and let the sun shine through.
Beautiful.
That's gorgeous.
Isn't it pretty?
That's nice.
My name is Nikki and I approve that message.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad that's over with.
Yes.
I thought that
Oh,
was a
yeah.
really pretty poem.
Yeah,
Could
it
be a
is.
prayer. Could be a prayer.
It could be.
Let's pray that to be true
There you
someday.
go.
Mm,
Use
I
that
just
to
can't
set
get
our
over it.
intentions.
Yeah. I
right.
can't get over the anger in the world right now. It's just so strong. Everywhere you go, everybody's angry.
Yeah.
It's grief. I've been telling people since COVID started, we're about to go through all the stages of grief. And right now we're in anger. And dear knows how
That's
many
for sure.
years. And what frightens me is no one's dealing with it. And
Right.
unresolved grief brings immense trouble down the road.
Yep.
Yes.
And until people catch up, like I'm using the term we're doomed, but I mean only in a societal kind of way, and
Yeah.
that's pretty serious. But the world is going through grief. Everybody's mad that Uncle George died, and no one could go to the funeral. No one could. I saw the same sort of thing when HIV happened, and
Mhm.
all of a sudden you couldn't acknowledge your friend's death because
Yeah.
of all this crap that was going around.
Mm-hmm.
And except we were lucky enough in the fact that the women's community really came through and took care of us and helped us through all this. And they provided volunteer services and it helped to deal with the grief. And
Yeah.
as a community, we were better off. And that's what's wrong with the people now. Because no one's acknowledging what you're experiencing is grief. No one's saying that on the news broadcast.
No.
No one's, even Dr. Phil is peddling his dear knows what, but
Yeah.
no one's dealing with the whole aspect of grief worldwide. This is not just a Canada thing. It's not an American thing. It's a worldwide thing.
Right. And that's kind of a segue into the whole subject of co-regulation because it's about de-escalating people's anger
Mhm. Mhm.
and anxiety.
Mhm.
And it's a great tool to have. The more I read about it, the more I got out of it. So I'll go ahead and start.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. The definition of co-regulation is the ability to regulate emotions and behaviors to soothe and manage stressful internal sensory input or external situations with the support and the direction of a connecting individual. So co-regulation is nurturing a connection between another individual that supports regulation needs through the use of strategies, tools, and calming techniques in order to self-soothe or respond in times of stress. Co-regulation and self-regulation are part of the development process. In order to move from a coexisting place to a place of independence, A child needs to develop emotional intelligence and social emotional learning. All of this is part of typical development. I'm not seeing that happen a lot these days, really. So the feelings and behavior of people in close proximity to us directly impact how we feel, and they respond to our emotion. When children become upset, if those around them stay calm, demonstrating how to calm down, the child can calm down quicker and will learn how to do that. How would you feel if your neighbor was yelling at the mailman for stepping on their freshly cut grass? Do you feel annoyed? Can you feel the fear that the mailman is feeling? How would you feel while walking past someone doing yoga in the park? Do you feel calm? So a caregiver has a lot to do with children learning techniques, and also teachers also in school, learning techniques to calm someone down. And some of those strategies are teaching deep breathing. And I have an example of that. One of my friends had to go to get shots in her knees. She has rheumatoid arthritis, and she had to get a shot in each knee. And she's had it done before. And she called me and she said, "You're the one person I would ask to come with me because I am so scared. I'm such a baby when it comes to pain." So I went with her, and she asked the doctor, "Can she come in with me?" And they were like, "Sure." So I went in, and so he gets out these big needles and she starts hyperventilating. And so I said, "Ann, look at me, look me in the eyes and breathe with me. Let's breathe in through our nose and out through our mouth, and in through our nose and out through our mouth." And she did it with me. I saw her wince a couple of times, but she kept breathing with me the whole time. And when he was done, she said, "I am so grateful that you came with me today because I was beside myself. I didn't want to do it." And she said, "But I knew that you would keep me calm."
Yeah.
And now that's a perfect example right there of co-regulation.
Yeah.
So also relaxation, breathing, breath control, distraction. Now that usually works with kids and animals too. Distract them.
Yeah.
And like with a child or even an adult too, like say road rage. Say, "Oh, look out the window. Oh, look at that beautiful tree over there. Oh, look at that, look at that, look at that." To distract them from that feeling that they feel welling up in them. Find some kind of a distraction. Look up to the sky, look out the window, look at a picture, look at me, look me in the eyes and breathe with me. Another strategy is physical exertion. For and start doing some exercises or something, or dance. One of my friends always tells me, in fact, Shirley does it, when you get anxious, put on some music and dance.
Mhm.
You know, moving your body helps a lot. Or start doing neck exercises. And I see a lot of people do that when they're nervous. They start doing neck rolls or shoulder shrugs. So those are all a good strategy. Be an empath, a person highly attuned to feelings and emotions of those around them. Feeling what another person is feeling when that person is at a deep level. And I could feel my friend's pain. I could see it in her eyes, and I felt it. But I just kept doing that breathing and looking her in the eye, and she got through it. So to co-regulate is being a warm, calming presence, and your tone of voice, your verbal acknowledgement of their distress. "I know this is painful, but you can get through this." That would be another example. So As children grow into toddlers, the most successful way to support their feelings is to calmly use words and gestures to redirect them when they are upset. When adults are feeling anxious or upset, when trying to redirect the child will respond with increased adrenaline, becoming more upset. So what they see you do is what they're going to feel. And I think that happens a lot with adults also. And in the same way, adults are impacted by other actions, and children pick up on the moods of others around them. When witnessing an uncomfortable event, such as the confrontation of that mailman, internally, you might feel your heart start to pound or clench your teeth. You might run and hide behind the curtains or try to separate yourself from them. But what is making you feel uneasy is what you need to deregulate. So this person said, once separated, you're often able to calm down using strategies to regulate. I take a sip of water, or I take some breaths of lavender. As an adults, we've learned how to adapt and overcome these intense feelings through different strategies. But children need to see it in another human being. As caregivers, we play a huge role in helping children calm down, or animals too, could work for animals too. When children are upset or overwhelmed, they look to us for help with regulating their emotions. And there's lots of articles about that you can look up. So self-regulation. You've probably heard the term self-regulation, which refers to the ability to control oneself in any given situation by balancing and calming internal sensory systems within the world around us. I do the breathing thing a lot, especially like if I'm going to the dentist. I hate going to the dentist. But as soon as I get in the chair, I can feel myself tense. So I have to just like, okay, Laura, just relax. I self-talk too. Just relax. Breathe in through your nose and out through your, start doing that slow breathing. But I have to listen to my body too, because I can feel myself tensing up. So I just have to, okay, just let go. Just let everything go. So that works for me.
Yep.
Let's see what else. What does co-regulation look like in the brain? Brains are amazing machines capable of processing the environment, including the feelings of others. Dr. Carolyn Leaf, who is a neuroscientist, stated, as you co-regulate with someone, the mirror neurons in their brain are activated. And this enables the person in the deregulated state to literally mirror your calmness. For long-term benefits and effective results, she recommends practicing co-regulation often. It will effectively rewire the brain so that over time, things that once were triggering or set off alarms no longer have that same effect, and they happen less often. So the brain can process the feelings of others in milliseconds, directly affecting our own moods and behaviors. I found that was very interesting. And then according to a research article, neuroscience shows that humans develop their abilities for emotional self-regulation through connections with reliable caregivers who soothe and model in a process called co-regulation. So it's a responsibility of caretakers to support co-regulation, which directly impacts a child's ability to self-soothe as they grow. When children are upset, the most important thing for caregivers to do is remain calm themselves. And I think that happens with animals too. I know when my black lab, when she was a puppy, oh my God, she'd get so excited. And I actually did Reiki on her to get her to calm down. And sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But if I was stay calm, she would eventually calm down and be calm. So it works with animals too. So The positives of being an empath are being able to offer support to others, knowing when someone is in need of assistance and reading a person's energy to see if they're a good fit for you. The cons of this ability are that it's draining, taking on the emotions of others. It feels like you're too sensitive and you feel burdened taking on so much. Being an empath can be described as feeling like a vacuum cleaner, sucking up the emotions of those around you, often before they realize how upset they are. Empaths need to be experts at co-regulation because of the amount of sensory and emotional input that they are sucking in, so to speak. The feelings and behaviors of people in close proximity to us directly impact how we feel and respond to our own emotions. So when someone is upset, if everyone around them stays calm, the child learns how to calm down quicker, or the person or the animal. Let's see what else is in here. Let's see. People impacted by complex trauma often struggle significantly with self-regulation throughout their life, and complex drama treatment calls for a focus on co-regulation in the therapeutic relationship. A therapist in the role of co-regulator monitors their own window of engagement and strives to be attuned to the moment-to-moment regulatory needs of their client. For example, an individual who's triggered by an overwhelming memory in therapy demonstrating hyperarousal may need the therapist to shift his or her tone, and the speed of their voice to lead them to a calmer, grounded state. Alternatively, a client who has a history of feeling invalidated and is telling a painful story in a dismissive or a nonchalant manner may need the therapist to increase the intensity of her emotional response and embody a higher level of energy in the room. The timing and pacing of therapeutic intervention is relevant to co-regulation, as trauma therapists seek to structure treatment in a way that increases an individual's window of tolerance over time. So another technique to use is mindfulness. Mindfulness is a technique using meditation. It refers to the practice of focusing your attention on the now rather than on the past or on the future. I love I can't think of the word, but when people, you imagine that you're in a car and the rear view mirror is small, and that's looking in the past, it's looking behind you, and the windshield is huge. That's because you're looking into the future. I thought that was kind of an interesting analogy. That was the word I was looking for. There was a 2022 study found that practicing mindfulness as an emotional self-regulation technique reduces feelings of loneliness in older adults. It also helped boost their immune system. That's interesting. Cognitive reappraisal is also referred to as cognitive reevaluation. This emotional self-regulation strategy is the ability to change the way you think about something and how you react to something that is triggering you. So if you can learn to recognize the triggers, then right away you can start self-regulating. Changing how you interpret stressful occurrences has been shown to reduce stress and increase positive feelings. Another study in 2020, looking at burnout syndrome in health professionals, found that cognitive reevaluation was linked to higher feelings of personal accomplishment and lower burnout, the emotion suppression. I thought that was interesting too. So some more tips are: get enough sleep. It's easier to fly off the handle when you're exhausted. Reducing insomnia by practicing good sleep hygiene can help. Eating well. You may have heard the expression hangry, which combines the words hungry and angry. Eating nutritious food at regular intervals can help you avoid hunger. Being hungry can make you irritable and quicker to anger. Exercising, we talked about, those old endorphins, inducing that can help reduce anxiety. Meditation, we talked about, and that's practicing mindfulness. Practice pausing. If someone says or does something upsetting, take several deep breaths before you automatically respond. This can help de-escalate a situation that may become damaging or dangerous. And one way to do this is to let go of the desire to win every encounter or argument. That's the hard one for me, because I'm always right. Not. Acknowledge your emotions. If you're having trouble coping, or you're dealing with feelings of depression or anxiety or loneliness, consider talking with a therapist. You can also try at-home strategies such as journaling, which I've done a lot of in my life, or talking with a trusted friend. Pick up the phone and call somebody. So emotional self-regulation gives you the ability to think before you act and enables you to view situations in a more positive way. Acquiring emotional self-regulation takes practice. Strategies, mindfulness, getting enough sleep, exercising, they can all help. And if you're having trouble managing your emotions or your anger, please consult a therapist, because that will also be very beneficial. So that's kind of what I had. And by the way, I had another sheet here. Where to go? Co-regulating moves, setting the scene. And that might look like this, using lighting as a cue, dimmer to bring the energy down, brighter to bring the energy up. Match volume and tone. When a situation is escalating, keeping a quiet or moderate volume with a serious, calm, steady tone. Like I had to do with my friend, Anne, look at me. Keep looking at me. Check your physical presence. Like getting on the student's eye level, getting on that person's eye level to balance the power. Use reflecting language, naming the emotions that people express as a way to show you are listening or seeing them. Like, I know you're in pain. I know you're angry. I know you're upset. And prompt strategies and choices. Remind people of available supports and strategies which they might not be aware of. So yeah, just to be a co-regulator, just be a warm, calming presence and be aware of the tone of your voice. And always have verbal acknowledgement of the distress. So that's all I got.
Great.
Pretty interesting stuff. And
I
I
was
think
chuck-
as ministers, it's real important that we're able to do that. Debbie?
I was chuckling a few times while you're talking, not at you, but your cat was running around the back of the couch.
I know, she does.
It was like,
Talk about being hyper. That
Yeah.
cat can be very hyper. It's when she's not getting any attention.
Yeah.
That's when she does that. So, anybody have any examples of how you may have done this and not even knew that you were doing it?
I've done it with my husband. He gets these spells, and like we're trying to figure out now what it is, where he almost goes comatose, and he'll stand there and appear that he's going to pass out and whatever, but I find if I can talk to him and get him to look at me and I employ it all, breathe, look at me. And I when he looks at me in a certain way, I get that spark that, okay, he's coming back now. And we were talking earlier about hearing. It's the same thing. We use alternate words to be understood. And I've been co-regulating all these years. I think where co-regulation, a good communications course will teach you a lot
Mhm.
about co-regulating. When I went to study to be a funeral director, one of the mandatory courses was a course in communication. And it
Right.
was all about hearing the person and you letting them know that you're hearing them.
And
So,
dealing with their grief. Yeah.
yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Mhm.
And that forms a bond between you. And it just co-regulates in everything we do.
Carrie, did you have something to add?
I do. One that you mentioned animals that it's current in our lives right now. We have these two rescue dogs, a Great Dane and a Pit Bull, and they, the way they play and fuss and squabble and carry on, you'd think they're furious with each other. And once or twice in the last year and a half they have been. But in general, when one of them gets on the other one's nerves, you watch them, and if they shake from head to tail, that's shaking it off, literally, and they come
Yeah.
back better. It's since we worked with a trainer a little bit when we first got them, and I'd never noticed that in all my years of having dogs, and it's amazing. They'll just, shake it off, we're good. It's fascinating just to see that natural thing they do, and then they're ready to do whatever it is. And another was my first young cousin that I got to spend time with several years ago, because she's 28 years old now. But when she was 5 or 6, we would go out, to the movies or to eat or something together, and she would get she is a very dramatic child, and get very just worn, just distressed and upset, and just very upset about something. And I would go, okay, Bryce, it's fine for you to be upset. It's perfectly fine. I'm not going to tell you you can't be upset. My only rule is you have to explain to me why you're upset. And then I would just sit calmly and wait.
Mhm.
And when she took the time to think through it and found her words, every single time she was fine. Because I don't know if it was just having me say, I want, not only do I want, but you need to tell me why you're upset right now. And just having an adult saying, I care about why you're upset. In fact, I want to hear about it. I want you to explain it to me. Or just maybe at that age, when she tried to put words to it, she might have realized it was silly. Who knows? But it never failed. That every time I gave her that space and said, step in here and tell me, it worked. And we sadly had similar experiences with my mother-in-law at the end of her time with dementia. Just trying to get her to focus long enough to find the words to tell me what she was upset about, because they got harder as things went on. And toward the end, the best I could do was say, okay, look in my eyes, take a breath, hold it, and see if that would help her. But just that connection, what it sounds to me like is connection.
So as a child, how did you have the wisdom to do that with your friend, with your cousin?
Oh, I wasn't a child. I was in my 30s.
Ah,
Yeah, she's,
gotcha.
oh gosh, I think 25 years younger than me.
Okay.
Exactly 25 years younger. So
Yeah.
No, I didn't have that ability as a child. And I didn't grow up in a household where that was practiced either. So yes, I don't know why that came to, maybe because I needed someone to do that with me when I was a kid. Very well could have been. And
Yeah.
I do the same with my nephews and other young kids I've interacted with over the years. Is, I'm not telling you you're wrong. I'm not telling you shouldn't be upset, but you're going to have to explain it to me, and it works.
Well, I can also
Yeah.
imagine that your writer's mind kind of goes through that scenario on both sides. You have to write about it, so you have to know it from both angles, right?
Yeah, it occurs to me. My first experience was having to get inside the head of the big bad in a
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
I had to go tell that person's childhood story, and oh my gosh, did that open things up.
Yeah.
Oh, I have sympathy now. Now I can write that character. So yes, you're absolutely right.
Yep.
Yeah, especially if you've been through it yourself and then you see somebody else going through it, it's a lot easier to be an empath with them because you know exactly what they're feeling. But you know, with people with dementia and Alzheimer's, I've done several workshops at visiting nurses, you know, how to deal with them because I have quite a few patients like that I work with. And I have two neighbors that are going through that right now. They both have a mother that has dementia. And I had to pull my neighbor aside one day because they were outside and she kept saying, "Mom, don't you remember that? I just told you that a little while ago. Don't you remember?"
Oh, wow.
And I took her aside and I said, "You cannot say that to somebody with dementia because they don't remember
Yeah.
and they never will." So you just have to go with it. You just have to go with it. You can't. That's one thing you never say to somebody with dementia or Alzheimer's. Don't you remember? Because no, they don't.
It's like throwing salt in the wound.
Yeah.
Right.
You
Yeah,
have to meet them on their level. Although
Absolutely.
it's tough for us to do that,
Yeah.
we have to do it, because no, they don't remember.
No.
Their brains are rewired. That's
Yeah.
all.
Mm.
They may understand everything that's going on, but they just can't verbalize it.
Right.
They can't find the words. They already have the words. They just can't utter them.
Yeah, they can't get them out.
Right.
In dementia care too, in the last probably 40 years, there was a book written called Validation Therapy. And that became my Bible dealing with them because to say, no, your mother's not standing there doesn't really help.
No.
But to look at them and say, I believe that you see your mother standing there. I want you to understand that I can't see her, but it's okay that you see her.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That stops the catastrophic reaction in a second.
Yeah.
I got a call from one of my in-home aides one day. Paula, you got to get up here now. I was living almost an hour away from them. But these two sisters she was taking care of, one of them just flipped out. They had a glassed-in porch, and Dot swore that the neighbors had kidnapped her mother. Now, of course, in their 80s, their mother was dead, but the aide couldn't quite get that across to her. So I show up and she's looking out these windows, and I said, "Hey, Dot, look in the window." She goes, "Yeah." I said, whose reflection do you see there?" She goes, "Well, you're over here and Dot's over here and she's over there." I said, "Who's the other person?" She goes, "Oh, I guess that's me." I said, "Do you see anything else?" And she said, "Yeah, there's a bunch of trees over there." I said, "Well, do you see Mom at all?" And she went, "No, I guess she left. Let's go have supper." And the aide looked at me and said, "How did you do that?" It's
Yeah.
part of it's redirection, part of it is validation. You need to know I can't see her. And as long as, again, I'm a person who very rarely raises my voice when I'm playing nurse. Because at 5 years old, when I used to go to work with my Nana in her dementia unit, very rarely did anybody raise their voice. And if they did, you knew there was going to be trouble. I was gotten out of the way and my Nana would handle it, but she'd usually handle it by lowering her voice. Now, two things are accomplished when you lower your voice. They can hear you better, and it brings them the anxiety down.
Yeah.
In the dementia unit, I had to keep retraining my aides not to raise their voice, not to react. And one evening, one of the guys was having a real hard time listening. So the aide was a male aide and he raised his voice. And one of the other guys got really, really angry, was ready to go for him and said, "Don't you dare yell at him. That's disrespectful." And I held my breath. And I said, "Okay, I'm going to let Jose handle this." He walked over to him very calmly and he said, "But I have to, because if I don't raise my voice, he can't hear me." And I was trying to tell him what we were having for dinner, what the choices were. The guy said, "Oh, I'm sorry." And he sat right down. And Jose looked at me. I went, "Way to go. You got it. Finally, you got it." But yeah, it with dementia, they could snap in 1 second and you could get hit. I had a nurse friend who was knocked across the room because she
Wow.
didn't listen to what was going on. And my sister works on the other end of the spectrum. She works with kids with autism. She does the same thing. Linny very rarely raises her voice. She treats them with respect. She talks to them lovingly all the time. And they adore her and they will do anything for her. But they also know you don't mess with Mrs. Rose. If Mrs. Rose says it's time to get off the computer and do your math, you better get off that computer and do your math, because Mrs. Rose isn't fooling. But yet she never raises her voice. She just says, "It's time. What did I say? It's time." And they're like, "Okay, Mrs. Rose, it's time."
And another thing I think that works with children is getting down on their level.
Yeah.
Sit down or sit on the floor to try to de-escalate a child. Because if you're standing over them, that's just going to make them more fearful and more anxious because they're intimidated. So if you get down on the floor, same probably with dogs, and people in wheelchairs. I've always learned that when you're talking to somebody in a wheelchair, sit and talk to them on their level.
Well, that works with dementia too. If they're sitting down, you sit down.
Right.
Because they're not going to hear you if you're standing over them, because again, it's an authority figure thing,
Right.
and it's a control thing.
And it causes fear a lot of the time.
Yeah. Because most of the catastrophic reactions I've seen with dementia are fear-based, because they can't remember or they can't hear you. Their hearing aids are working, but the connection between the sound and their brain is not working. So they get panicky and they get fearful, and then they start to cry or whatever and irritate the heck out of the rest of them. Although I've seen them deal with that themselves. One lady used to cry every night at supper time because she thought her husband was coming to join her for dinner. Well, what she didn't remember was he was dead. And she was complaining about her kids, and the other lady with dementia leaned over, patted her on the hand, and she said, "Honey, our kids put us here because they think this is what's best for us, and they're only trying to do what's best for us. So maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea if we just accepted it." You could have knocked me over with a feather
Wow.
out of somebody who was severely demented. It calmed the lady right down. They had a great dinner. Everything was fine. It was just like, yeah, sometimes they can figure it out themselves and they don't need my help.
Uh-huh.
And I think some people are just natural empaths.
Yeah.
It's just in their nature.
Yep. And I think this woman she was always very calm, except when her husband was around. He irritated the heck out of her. And he got mad at me when I suggested he not come at mealtime because he disrupted the whole mealtime.
Yeah.
What finally stopped him was one of the other ladies, who was a real hot shit, said to him, "How about if I sit in your lap and we talk about what comes up?" Never came back from mealtime after that. And he looked at me, he was horrified. I said, "That's just Gloria. I warned you." You never knew what she was gonna do. She was one of the original Rockettes. And she
Wow.
was a character.
Wow.
Yeah, she used to sidle up to the young security guards and make lewd comments. And they come running to me and say, "Paula, you know what she just said to me?" And I went, "And?"
Well, my father had dementia and he was also an alcoholic, and my sister would bring him to the grocery store, and she'd have to watch him every minute because he would flirt with every woman he passed.
Yeah.
Or if she took him out to eat, he would flirt with the waitresses. And unbeknownst to her, he called the local newspaper. Now he's in his 80s and he has dementia. Plus he's an alcoholic. He called the local newspaper and put an ad in the paper for a live-in housekeeper.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
can be pretty foxy. Yes, they can.
Yeah.
But yeah, nurses have had to co-regulate for years. Some of the nurses don't. Some of them yell. Some of them demand. I wish the one who had taken care of me in intensive care after my open heart surgery had known how to co-regulate, because we wouldn't have spent the night fighting with each other. She didn't listen either. Somebody said, "Did you report her to the hospital?" I said, "No, she was probably just having a bad night." And I was just the wrong one to have a bad night with, because I was fighting back.
Did she know you had been a nurse?
No,
Uh,
no, she didn't know that at all. That wasn't one of the things we discussed, because I was too busy trying to tell her I couldn't breathe, because I couldn't, because she
Well,
put
that's
me flat.
important.
Yeah, I can't breathe when I'm flat, but she
Yep.
wouldn't hear that. So, I got through it. I finally passed out and breathed just fine, I guess. I solved the problem. Yeah.
So Debbie, what have you used as a technique?
Pretty much the same thing. I do deep breathing, and I normally I talk softly anyway, and that seems to help. I save my louder voice for those hallmark moments when you really have to get someone's attention.
Yeah.
Yeah, Steve my husband was fairly quiet, Ryan was fairly quiet. I grew up in an alcoholic in a very violent home, so
Yeah.
if you're quiet, then they'd forget you were there, type of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Me too.
yeah, it's just like, oh, I just disappear. I just go stand in the corner and no one will see me. I won't get hit, So it's
And now you can't shut me up.
take it up for lost time. I'm an empath only, and I don't want to be necessarily, but it happens when I
Yeah.
least expect it. The worst episode I had was when we went up to Salem, Massachusetts one time. I've been up there a few times, but in the center of the city, there's the ancient cemeteries there and all the graves and the memorial for the witches that were, people were killed as witches. And it was really weird. Ryan and Steve, they were walking ahead of me because I wanted to go see gift shops and all that. So they were ahead of me. It's a sunny day and I'm starting to walk through it. And it's getting foggy. And I'm thinking, why is it getting foggy? And it was the weirdest thing. And it's like I got right like in the center and I started crying and I couldn't stop crying. It was like a
Wow.
total feeling of despair.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, wow. I forced myself to get through. And once I got through, oh, it's not foggy. It was only foggy in the cemetery, apparently just for me. So I'm an empath. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't want to be, but oh, well.
Got to shake it from head to toe.
That's it, like the dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Take it off.
That's funny. One of my friends is going through a divorce, and every time her husband starts drinking and getting abusive, she just stands there and says, "I'm finding my center. I'm finding my center." And she keeps repeating it until she calms down and he goes away. And it works for her because she's also doing the breathing. But I'm finding my center is almost like a meditation is for her anyway.
Yeah.
And that keeps the battles at a minimum. Fortunately, he's got his own house now, so she doesn't have to put up with them. But yeah, she says, all I do is say, "I'm finding my center. I'm finding my center." Good for you, girl.
Yeah.
Nothing harder than trying to stop an alcoholic from picking a fight.
Yeah.
Yep. I know.
Most of us know that.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. I find too that if people are going on a rampage with gossip, you can dial it back or reel them back in by saying, I really don't want to go down this conversation path. And here's what I kind of think we should look at. And that sometimes gets them to correct and stop
Mhm.
throwing up.
My daughter was telling me about a show that she saw on TV, and I don't remember what it was or when she saw it, but she said there was this whole study on anger that people in the world right now, where everybody's just so angry, and they blame it on social media. Social media fuels the anger.
Because of the anonymity,
Yeah,
just writing whatever you
and-
feel. Mhm.
and television too.
Yeah.
You know, there's always people out there fueling the anger.
Mm.
Sad. I
Yeah,
find it
there's
sad.
some people that are really nasty on social media, which is why I
Yeah.
don't spend
Oh,
a lot of
yeah.
time.
I
on it.
give you an example. This guy, there was a big accident here in town, like 6 cars, and it was all attributed to road rage. And so it was an article. And so this guy commented on the underneath, and he said, so many crazy drivers around and no cops are around anymore. Thanks, Joe and the Democrats. I'm like,
Wow.
what?
What's that got to do with anything? Yeah.
They're responsible for people driving crazy?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think what he was referring to was not having enough police officers, but they're not going to stop the crazy drivers.
Oh,
They'd have to have a cop on every corner
Yeah.
because they're everywhere, those crazy drivers.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't even like to drive on the highway anymore. It's too scary. People
I know the
and
way they
out and
weave in
zipping
and out.
around.
Yeah. Oh,
and right on your bumper, and because
Mm.
when I see somebody right on my bumper, the first thing I want to do is just slow down even more.
you know what I do? I put my windshield wipers on with the spray, and it sprays on their windshield, and they have to slow down. So, one of the kids told me that. Yeah. No. Yeah, well, yeah, they eventually go by me, but hey, go by me. I don't care if you're that important. Be my guest. I don't give a damn.
I get people flipping me the bird all the time because
Yeah.
I'm not driving fast enough, and I'm going 70,
Yeah.
and I'm not
Yeah.
driving fast enough for them.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, but
everybody's just
we have gray
flying right
hair,
by
so they
me.
all assume that we don't know how to drive.
Really, because you have gray hair,
Yeah,
you don't know how to drive.
that's what they assume.
Well, I thought I saw a little bit of blue in yours, Laura. Have you got highlights?
No, it
Oh, it
just
might have been the color of
shiny.
your jacket
Yeah.
reflecting somehow. It looked like you had blue highlights.
Yeah, it does a little bit. Yeah,
Yeah, it
the
does.
lighting.
It-
Anyway, I want to tell you before we get to the end here. I'm so proud of my daughter. She's 54, and we went out for brunch yesterday, and we were at this restaurant. It was probably like 11 o'clock, and we were sitting near the door. And as we were almost done with our meal, a woman came in the door, an older woman, and she was by herself, and she went back and she sat at a table in the back by herself. And my daughter got up to go use the bathroom, and she had to pass this woman that was sitting by herself. Unbeknownst to me, I mean, I had my back to them, so I didn't see anything. But when my daughter came back to the table, she went over to the waitress that was at the cashier, and I thought, and she was giving her money, and she was talking to her, and I thought she was buying me a gift card because I love that restaurant. So I didn't say anything. So we get outside and we're walking to the car, and I said, did you just buy me a gift card for that restaurant? I love that restaurant. And she said, no, I paid for that lady's meal.
Oh,
I was like,
Nice.
you did? She's like, yeah, I just felt like it. She was by herself. And when I passed her, she smiled at me and said hello. And so I just felt like doing something nice for her. And she said, when I was talking to the waitress and asking her how much her meal was, and I told her what I was going to do, the waitress teared up. and said, you couldn't have picked a better person to do that for. She comes in here all the time by herself.
Oh,
And the waitress got teary-eyed. And she said, well, just tell her, don't tell her who paid for it. Just tell her, happy Thanksgiving.
Nice.
that
I
was
taught her well.
Well,
good.
you done good.
Proud
That
mama.
was so sweet. I couldn't
Yeah.
believe she did that. That was so sweet.
That was good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's great.
I think we all have a bit of the self-regulation in us. Not everybody does, but
Well, I
caregiv-
think each decade
especially-
gives us a little more experience with it.
yeah.
Yeah.
A greater awareness. Like
Yeah.
20 years ago, people would have looked at you cross-eyed if you tried to have this dialogue.
Yeah, exactly. Because my dad was one of those, stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about.
For-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Not, oh, what's wrong? What are you upset about? Stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about.
Yeah.
I think it's partly getting older and having more experience, and also watching the generations behind us do the same dumb shit we did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh boy, can we not move forward in a different way? And you try your best with the next
Mhm.
generations, and they look at you and nope, they have to do it too.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
we do our best.
One
Yeah,
of the reasons I never had kids, I didn't want to pass that stuff along.
yeah.
Me too.
Well, and
Me
to a
too.
degree, every other generation tends to repeat itself because the next generation says, I'm never going to do that.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah,
They still do.
I know.
You
I
still-
became my father and I swore I would never do such a thing.
Yep.
It's like,
Mhm.
darn, look at that mirror.
Yeah. I think
My
I'm a lot
son-
more like my mother too, though. Even
Yeah.
though she was an enabler, I have my moments of enabling, but
Yeah.
she was a very kind, loving person.
Yeah.
You know, and I think I got that from her.
My sisters tell me I often sound just like my mother. I said, well, I'm the oldest. I was around her a lot more than the rest of you.
That's
I got
true.
the I got the tapes laying in the back of my head. I try not to, but we
Well,
all
and
have
my
this.
mom was the
Really?
peacekeeper. too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My mother was the peacekeeper.
Oops. We have several of those, but
Yeah.
it's funny. The youngest one, she doesn't keep the peace, but nobody dares misbehave around her.
Wow.
She's got this amazing power over all of us. That all she has to do is give you a look and it stops. Not that I
Ah.
actually behave around her, but a couple of my sisters never have gotten along. They get along fine when they're at Lynn's.
Wow.
She's an amazing person. She really is. We're very
Huh.
lucky to have her in the family.
Oh, and I wanted to tell you about my new hospice client. He has ALS
Oh,
and he can't move anything and he can't talk either. But you guys that are into technology, this is amazing. He's flat out and his legs are in splints, but he has a computer screen in front of him.
Mhm.
And it has on the bottom half of it is a keyboard on the screen. He looks at the letter and it prints. So that's how he communicates.
wow.
That's great.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Amazing. I couldn't believe it. I kept trying to figure out, is that connected to him somewhere? How is he doing that? How's he
Yeah.
typing? And all he had to do is look at the letter. And then I watched him. And when he'd look at the letter, a red circle would be around it. And then it would appear at the top.
Yeah.
And he would, amazing.
Yeah.
I did bowls with him. I put my Tibetan singing bowls all over his body.
Oh, wow.
And he smiled.
Oh,
It was so sweet. And when I left, she said, oh, wait a minute. Steve wants to say something to you. And I looked at it and it said, thank you so much. Please come back.
That's awesome.
Wow.
Yeah.
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 Pretty cool.
Yeah, I knew someone who had an arm unit. He would wear this thing on his arm where he could, you know, basically look at it and it would project his voice. And so he could be a speaker. He was a motivational speaker, even though he couldn't talk.
Mhm. Well, that's
Wow.
like Stephen Hawking, wasn't he? Didn't he? do
Yeah.
something?
Yeah. Yeah.
I tell you, technology is amazing.
Yeah.
Just to look at a letter and it types it. Wow.
Mhm. All
Now,
right.
topic for next week.
Yeah. Any requests?
Gratitude.
I doubt
Yeah.
I'll be around just to let y'all know, because the half marathon is on Thanksgiving in Atlanta.
All right.
Oh, good luck.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Do you feel prepared?
If oh yeah, I ran 13.1 miles last week. So
Wow.
not on
Great.
pavement. Now there's the wild card.
Yeah.
Good for you.
And the
That's
big crowd.
awesome.
I think it's gonna be fun. And we're just gonna chill out in the hotel and have real internet and watch movies and things that normal people don't do, and order takeout, and just it's gonna be very relaxing.
Good.
Cool.
Have fun.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Mhm.
Awesome. You want to do gratitude next week?
We could.
Well, I always do that on Thanksgiving and go around the table and everybody has to say what they're grateful for, or what
Okay.
thankful for.
Yeah.
Thankful.
Thankful for.
I used to do that at work around this time. I used to send out an email. You have to list 5 things that you're grateful for. And you can't just say your family and your pets.
Right.
Right.
You have to find five other things.
Okay.
Cool. So maybe that should be our assignment for next
Yeah.
Sunday.
There you go.
Sounds good.
All righty. We are at time.
We are.
Thank you. This was a good one. Thank
Mhm.
you.
Have a blessed
you.
We
Thanksgiving,
shall see you
everyone.
next week.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we'll see you next Sunday.
Yep.
Ciao.
Wonderful
Take care, everybody.
Thanksgiving.